Hi everyone, I'm Pari. Welcome to Living Your Best Life with Eddie Stone, founder and CEO of Touchstone Essential. Hello Eddie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Perry. Hope you are this evening as well, and hope everybody in the audience is doing okay also.
It's been a while, okay, because you've been busy, right? But we are happy to have you back here.
Yeah, it's been too long, right? I've missed our chances to connect, but with travel and all the disruptions that seem to come from summer is just sort of the best I can do right now.
Uh-huh. Okay, so, Eddie, I have a question from Jeanette Cormier, which she's been waiting for some time to. At a
Okay.
somewhat okay, at a somewhat early stage of Alzheimer or dementia, do you think it could be reversed with zeolite? And would it require a higher dosage?
Well, Alzheimer's obviously is really quite tricky and, you know, devastating, right? Because we don't really have any kind of cure. There are a few medicines out there they think can help to slow it down. But boy, when people get that diagnosis, I certainly understand that they and their, families have a lot of concern. Um, there's no question that in some of the research that's out there, individuals that go on to live a healthier life uh, have improved outcomes in that it looks like their rate of progressions are slower. But more research needs to be done in that area. But when I talk about that, I'm talking about individuals that are really eating as well as exercising to improve their cardiovascular health. So what they're really doing is improving blood flow, performance, cardiac output, those kinds of things. So high intensity interval training, really almost any kind of significant exercise seems to have a positive impact at slowing sort of that digression that takes place with Alzheimer's, as well as individuals with a largely plant-based diet. Even if they're not persons that can completely change and move to a full plant-based diet, there does seem to be some stability or at least some rates that slow down the progression. In that regard, it would make logical sense that a natural mineral like zeolite, which sort of encourages the body to detoxify, can help to clean the body up so that the immune system performs better. It would be a sort of a logical addition to new healthy habits that someone was going to adapt. But it's not something that we can say, hey, listen, if you do this, we know it's going to slow that rate of the disease. We just don't know that much yet, right? And so we've got to use common sense about living as healthy a lifestyle as possible, but it's also very individual. And sometimes what really can matter is how early in the process was the diagnosis given, so that the person may have a chance to really try to address some of those issues. As our societies get older, not just in the US and Thailand, but, around the world where we face dementia and Alzheimer's as these aging diseases, I'm really hopeful we'll see some breakthroughs, and a combination of lifestyle changes as well as drug therapies could really begin to make an impact on a disease that, boy, I tell you, if you've got somebody in your family that has it, a close relative, loved one, it's a challenge not only for the person that has the disease, but everyone around them.
ADCOLI is more like at the present time, we have more and more people diagnosed. Oh, so sorry. Alzheimer. More and more people are diagnosed to be Alzheimer, right? But in the past, the number of people not many, right? What happened these days?
Well, there's a few things to take into account. One is that really almost all over the world, with the exception of underdeveloped countries or countries where we see war-torn issues, such as Syria or something like that, life expectancies really are lengthening globally, particularly in the developed parts of the world. And so even from, say, 25 or 30 years ago, all of a sudden women are expected to live, say, 12 to 15 years longer, men 6 to 8 years. Currently, kids in their late teens and early 20s, highly likely that they're going to live well into their hundreds, right? And so the one thing we see is that some of these degenerative diseases, which is the category we'd put Alzheimer's and dementia in, these degenerative diseases, as a population gets older, they become a larger portion of the cause of somebody's death. And so that would include as well cardiovascular disease and cancer. And so it's hard to say from, say, 50 years ago, is the percentage of people that are developing dementia or Alzheimer's a higher percentage than ever before, or is it a reflection of the fact that our society is getting older, and as they get older, they're likely to die of one of these degenerative diseases? I know for myself, it seems like you hear more about it, right? It seems like it's a more common thing, but I think it's probably more aligned with just the population getting older. Now, that being said, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, as we have moved away from a largely plant-based diet with some limited animal protein, we've moved away from less frequently fresh fruits and vegetables being prepared for a person's meal, more to preservative-based, manufactured foods. These kinds of foods, there's no question our health has suffered, whether we're talking about the increased risk associated with diabetes, metabolic issues, which sort of just plague the modern world, even cardiovascular disease and cancer. And so sort of this fast food notion that is the modern diet, it's hurt us with cardiovascular disease, cancer, metabolic disease. And I have to believe that's also impacted the rates of Alzheimer's and dementia. But that research is, still in the works, right? And so it's hard to make that direct link, but I hear what you're saying, and I think there has to be some truth when you consider the modern diet, the role that it's playing.
So it's best for us to try to eat good food, okay, for now, to prevent, because we don't really know, and control our stress.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's just good all around, but there, to your point, I can't remember if it was this last fall or maybe it was this past spring, but there was research that was produced, a research paper that said basically, even if you have genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's or dementia, you can reduce your risk of those diseases with a healthy lifestyle. Well, what does that mean? It most likely means that limited to no tobacco use. It most likely means that a person's able to manage the stress in their life, which we know literally stress can be a killer. It most likely means someone has got more of a plant-based, fresh food diet, less of the processed foods that we're no fan of here on the show. And there's also the element of an association with family. We know that people that are amongst family, particularly in happy or congenial situations, they have a greater life expectancy no matter what their habits are. And so the research says there's no question that investing in your health and a healthy lifestyle, even if you have predisposed genetic risk factors for these diseases, you reduce your risk. So, that's really all I need to hear to sort of affirm the idea that less processed food, more fresh food, these kinds of things are important investments for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And then we can prevent many kind of disease and illness too, right?
Yeah, that's right. I don't think it's a zero sum. I don't think we can say you reduce to zero your chance of cancer or dementia or something like that. But listen, even if you can reduce the risk by a few percentage points, and if you think about how precious life is, it's worth that investment of time and energy. And I acknowledge it takes some time and some energy to have a healthy lifestyle. And that payoff, though, is quality of life and longevity. And I think the percentages are on our side.
Mm-hmm. It's good. And at the end, today you have a very interesting to talk about, right? About cancer, prostate cancer, right?
Yeah, I do. I want to talk about that. Before I get into that diet and prostate cancer, mm-hmm. which comes up pretty frequently, right? Maybe because I'm a man or a male, that'd be one reason why those questions sort of flow my way. And so I know it's something that concerns people. But I want to deal with a quick question I've gotten several times over the past week. And so I think a lot of your audience realizes that, I'm behind the Good Inside website, and that's our company, and they're familiar with the fact that we sell zeolite products, and I'm proud to say we probably sell the two most popular zeolite products in the entire world, and so I appreciate a great deal the customers and the advocates that we have. I get asked the question though about why we use a natural zeolite as opposed to a synthetic zeolite. And for those that don't know, our product is a natural zeolite that we mined that's called clinoptilolite. That's a sheet-like zeolite. And that particular zeolite has such a long history of human consumption and research, also animal research, not just in the States, but around the world, that natural zeolite enjoys what's called GRAS status with the FDA. That means it's generally recognized as safe. So not a novel ingredient. It's something that's been around, been a part of life for a very long time. When we made a decision to launch Touchstone back in 2012, we very specifically chose to work with the natural zeolite that we would mine, then mill and clean appropriately to make it bioavailable because of the existing history and safety data. But as some of the people have pointed out, there are clearly synthetic alternatives. There's a product called Hydrex out there that's a very popular synthetic zeolite. Hydrex was originally made for the automobile tire industry. They match it up with titanium dioxide and rubber. It helps to deflect light and keep rubber in an automobile tire, not to bore people, but keep the temperature down. So the perspective would be that the rubber in the tire would last longer. And so that's called a synthetic magnesium aluminum silicate, which does not enjoy the GRAS status in that same respect that the clinoptilolite does. And so, and to be quite candid, it's less expensive to work with the synthetic, right? Some of these exercises we go through to prepare the product and clean it would be eliminated. But the bottom line is that safety data, that volume of safety data on a global level does not exist for that magnesium aluminum silicate. And the challenge companies have is they don't make their own sort of personalized zeolite in a lab to use in their products. They're all buying these synthetic products in bulk to make their products. And so for myself, and of course people probably know if you've watched more than one show, my position on natural and organic and the sustainability and impact on the environment. I'm just not a fan of using things that are synthetic. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so these companies using these off-the-shelf synthetic products is not a direction we would go. In terms of their effectiveness, I have to say I don't have side-by-side data to refer people to. I know that we use Malvern instrument elemental testing on our products, and we know that it gets down to as low as 0.7 nanometers in size. So we're talking about really, really small particles, and we know they're active and have a limited amount of reconglomeration that occurs during its shelf life. So I know that's probably more technical than, say, a lot of people are looking for on the show, but I've had enough of those questions over the past month. I wanted to try to address those, and so hopefully that makes sense. And for people that want to know about the zeolite, and I encourage you if you don't, it's a wonderful adjunct to your health habits. Go to the website, look at Pure Body, look at Pure Body Extra. Lot of great information there. And if you don't like all the science stuff, you can just read reviews from people that are using the products and their experiences. But to the point of the show, so several people have asked me about the research associated with pomegranates or pomegranate juice and prostate cancer. And I think I know where this is coming from. A couple of years ago, one of the prominent big food companies that sells pomegranate juice, right? They talked a lot about antioxidants and prostate cancer and had funded some research out there. And then some of this goes back to about, I want to say it's probably been about 15 years ago when Dr. Dean Ornish led a team of people looking at prostate cancer, which is a significant issue for the male population, particularly in countries like the US and others where the population's getting older and you've got more and more baby boomers sort of crossing that threshold into 60. And so prostate cancer, PSA levels rising, that's a huge concern for people. The good news in most cases is that prostate cancer is a slow growing cancer. And so it's the type of thing that if a person's paying attention, if they're visiting the doctor on a frequent basis and getting those blood and urine analysis made, they'll identify early on if their PSA levels are rising. So, they can catch something like that early. It's kind of like when a woman is doing self breast examinations and they're able to detect a lump in the early stages. This kind of thing allows them to either look at their diet, exercise, lifestyle, or even seek, medical help, attention, even surgery, right? Same type of thing where if you're going to the doctor on a regular basis, you see this ahead of time, you can get ahead of it, and you don't have to have an outcome where prostate cancer kills you, right? So there are strong chances there. But Dr. Ornish really pioneered research, and what they proved was that in male populations with prostate cancer that were considered elderly, so you're talking about populations that are 55 years of age and older, and I'm a little sensitive to that because I'm 55, about to turn 56 years of age. What would happen if those individuals became vegans or lived on a plant-based diet, as opposed to the animal protein dominant diet that they had when they were diagnosed with prostate cancer? And so to work with this research, which you can kind of consider as probably really quite cumbersome, right? You've got somebody that's 55 or 65 or 70 years of age, and they've got these habits they've had a long time, right? They enjoy their hamburger or their chicken or their eggs or whatever it is. They probably wouldn't very easily, change their lifestyles to this. And so in the Ornish research, what they did was this was an expensive study. They had, by quality chefs, they had their meals pre-prepared and delivered to their homes on a daily basis during the entire year of the research. And what they found was at the end of 1 year of switching these individuals from an animal protein-based diet to a plant-based diet, they were actually able to stop or completely reverse in a high percentage the progression of their prostate cancer. And you gotta say to yourself, that's pretty exciting, particularly when you consider an aging population and how many people will face prostate cancer as they get older. And so very promising research. But they also realized that the research has an impractical quality in that very few people find themselves in a situation where somebody's going to be able to pre-prepare and deliver to their home all of those probably wonderful meals, right? You've got people professionally cooking fruits and vegetables. And so then they looked at, okay, what would happen if they just tried to improve the ratio between the amount of animal protein that a person was having on a daily basis versus their vegetable protein, right? So if they were normally 7 days a week, if say 18 to 19 meals had animal protein during the meal, what would happen if you could reduce that number by a third or by half? And so the next thing they discovered is that if you're able to change those ratios by even as much as 25%, a person can reduce by as much as half. So a 25% reduction in animal protein equals almost a 50% gain in improvement of risk factors and progressions of prostate cancer. That's pretty exciting, right? And then they played around over time with different ratios, and basically they found that just modest increases of animal protein, which would mean for most people that they're full and not going to eat as much animal protein, they saw significant changes. So it goes back to some of the things we talk about on the show, which is, processed food diets with lots of animal protein in it is just not preferred if the health outcome you're looking for is longevity and vitality, right? Plant-based diet is the direction to point yourself, even if you can't point yourself there 100%. Well, the pomegranate research is interesting because if a good thing like more fruits and vegetables is good for the diet, then can those things even be more significant? And in prostate, or excuse me, in pomegranates, the identified active ingredient is ellagat acid. I might not quite be saying that properly right there, but ellagat acid is sort of that thing that you're looking for. And so in the research, what they did was they took and standardized that component of pomegranates, which everybody agrees is sort of the active constituent, and they gave it to men who were dealing with prostate cancer. And then they also did some in vitro test tube research. So here is a situation where you're taking prostate cancer cells and you're actually applying, in some cases, you're actually applying the 40% extract directly to it, and then also looking at what happens when people would consume it, either in a tablet form or in a juice extract. Well, what they discovered was, against the placebo, and this really surprised a lot of people, was there was no change. There was no improvement or no diminished activity with those active prostate cancer cells in the presence of that isolated, standardized key component from pomegranates. So then they took that just a step further. And this particular research, this next step of research, which I think is fascinating, and some of this research you can find in the American Association of Cancer Research. It's all out there online, so it's not difficult to find. But this next bit of research wasn't conducted by a large food company. It was actually conducted by a nonprofit charity. And the reason this is important is you want to really pay attention to research that's not commercialized, where there's not that doesn't mean that all research on commercial products is bad. I'm not trying to suggest that at all. But what I am saying is that when you find research done by charity organizations with no agenda, man, that's something to really look at. There's probably really something to glean from that. And what they discovered was, instead of using a standardized extract from the pomegranate, what would happen if they used pomegranate powder? So in this case, you're talking about removing the water and the cellulose so that you can get into, say, a capsuled form, and really not looking at a lot of material. I mean, you're in most of the research, they were looking at, say, 100 milligrams of pomegranate powder. That probably comes out, Pari, to anywhere from, say, 8 to 9, maybe 11 of those juicy pomegranate little red kernels that people love to chew on. I've got a daughter that just loves pomegranates, right? She beats them out of a little pomegranate shell. So that research, what they discovered, and the reason they did it that way was, in order to really be able to control it in a double-blind fashion, what that means, it's blinded by the participants. You want to make sure that you've got a placebo control in here if you really want to know what's going on, because placebos can have profound impacts if people believe they're one thing or another. And you can kind of imagine, if you were giving somebody a pomegranate to eat, it would be difficult to mimic that with a placebo version of a pomegranate. So that's why the powders became really critical. And so what they discovered was, against live cancer cells, it actually had a profound impact while using the whole pomegranate powder. Remember, just absent of the water and the cellulose material. And then when they took those same powders and combined them with other things such as green tea powder, turmeric powder, they found that not only would they slow the rate of growth of those prostate cancer cells, they actually would stop the growth altogether, not just slow the ratios. My point of all that is, when people ask me these questions, there's no magic bullet. You know, the answer isn't that you go out and you just drink some pomegranate juice every day, or asparagus juice, or celery juice, or something like that. Your body craves a whole constituent. And when you juice something, you're really not getting that whole body of material. Now, I do recognize when you powder it, you're losing the fibrous material in the water, but those micronutrients that work synergistically together remain intact and in station. And the key for you and I to think about is, the body and disease responds to variety. The biggest gains in all of this kind of research that we see is when a person is presenting to their body not just an isolated material, whole fruits and vegetables in the best form they can get, but a variety of them, because you get all of those phytonutrients that can work in synergy together. And that's the main thing today that I wanted to share, is that I realize sometimes when these questions come in, it's coming from sort of a quiet desperation, right? Somebody may have gotten notification from their doctor that their PSA levels were too high. They're concerned. Just know that you can do something about it, but there's not just a single thing to do. Thinking about your diet, exercise, variety, meditation, all of these factors in conjunction with listening to your physician and listening to the medical care that's being offered, these are the best ways to reduce your risk of dying of these diseases. And that's the advice I can give, is there's just no magic bullet. You've got to really look at the synergy of a whole plan of sleep and maybe meditation, stress management, food, water. All these things are important.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's interesting, Eddie.
I think so. I'm probably a little bit nerdy, but I have to say I find this research quite fascinating.
I also did stay here in Thailand, Eddie. More Thai people have diagnosed with a prostate cancer. More and more numbers high going up,
Yeah, I hope they take those diagnoses quite seriously and think about what, from a lifestyle standpoint, they can do to reduce their risk.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much, Eddie, today for sharing all this value information with us. So we see you again next time. Okay.
Looking forward to it, Pari. Thank you.
Have a good night, Eddie. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.